All right, what is up? Welcome back to another episode of Lifting, Running, and Living with your favorite coaches, Kelly.
Hello.
Hey, and JK, that is me. All right, we are kicking off episode number 28. So without further ado, let's do what we do and start off with some updates. So Kelly, what's going on in your world these days?
Well, first, it's been 3 weeks since we last recorded, so a larger chunk of time.
Oh yeah, that is right.
Yeah.
Apologies for the technical the technical difficulties that were all mine. I can get into that during my updates.
Yeah.
So
We did our best, people, but our best didn't work. So here
it
we
did
are,
not.
a
Yeah,
week
it
late.
did not.
So for the past 2 weeks, I've been doing a morning run challenge with some of the people in my Slack channel. And actually, this is the third week that we're doing it. And it started as a challenge, and now it's more of a summer support group because with the heat that I'm pretty sure most of the US right now is dealing with, we gotta do it all summer. It's not like we can do a couple weeks of morning runs and then go back to whatever we were doing. I mean, I guess we could, but it's like miserable. It was already 70 degrees when I went at 7:30 this morning. So
Mm.
brutal, but it's been helpful for me just having a stated goal, which my goal is to be out the door by 7:30, because before I would go at like usually between 8 and 9, sometimes a little later. I would do some work first after drinking my coffee and then go running. So it's been a little shifting of my morning routine, but it's really just like pushing my work back, which is I'm learning is fine. So
Out of the group that you have that's doing this particular challenge, would you say going into it that there were people who were already running in the morning or primarily were more like afternoon, evening, or like what's the percentage of people who are already kind of doing it versus that weren't? Like, is this new behavior for them?
it's new behavior probably for like, I would say half of them,
Oh,
maybe.
really? Okay.
Well, so here's the thing with I'm sure you've experienced with challenges too. Like people have joined the channel, but only a
Mhm.
subset actively participates in the channel. So I don't know for sure who, and like it's beyond just people I coach. So I don't know their previous habits. I know my athletes' habits because I see all of their workouts.
Yeah.
Um, but like out of my athletes, I would say it's like 50-50. Some of them would like sometimes run in the morning, but it was definitely more challenging. So this was more of a like trying to get it into more of a habit because summer. And some of
Yeah.
them prefer afternoon or evening or just like have had plans to run in the morning before and it just doesn't happen. So this is more of like an accountability thing for them.
Yeah. I know that, that story all too well of joining and then the engagement
Yeah.
not necessarily being all the way there. I like the idea of a challenge like this, from the aspect of not just like doing the thing itself. Like, okay, the challenge is I'm going to run at 7 o'clock each morning or 7:30. Like, not just that part. It's more like, oh man, this really shows me things that I need to put in place in order to execute on the thing I said that I was going to do. Like that starts
Hmm.
getting into the systems stuff. Uh, and that's where I like things like this sort of like very specific challenge. Like we're gonna all do this particular thing, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh man, I was able to kind of white knuckle it, as they say, for the first week or so, and
Yeah.
then realized like, oh, okay, when I don't, I don't know, when I don't do my laundry, then I don't actually have clothes to wear to go run, or
Yeah.
I'm just making that up, different
Yeah.
things like that. So that's yeah, I like that. Well, that's cool.
Yeah. I have learned that Thursdays are usually my hardest weekday to get
Okay.
out early. And then weekends are challenging. And that's partially because I tend to drive somewhere versus run from my house. So for those, like, my goal is still be out the door by 7:30, which is an improvement on what I was doing. But it's still like, I don't know, weekends are harder because I don't really have to as much as the
Yeah.
weekdays, obviously, for like work and stuff. But yeah, Thursdays, I'm just wiped. Partially because I have the group run Wednesday night. So I do my morning Wednesday run and then evening run. So Thursday's usually hard in general, but then getting out earlier on top of that can be challenging. But I'm doing it.
I like
So
it. Well, congrats to you and your group. It's one of the things I love about challenges. I had posted something about challenges recently, just with there's a
yeah,
couple
it
of
was
different
like
ways to
2 days ago.
navigate. Was it? I don't
I saw it and I was just like, why? This was like perfect timing because I needed to read this.
Well, fantastic. I needed to send it
Yeah,
at
I
the
think
time.
I feel like you posted it on Saturday, which was a day I didn't go until 8:30 because I just like couldn't get out the door. And your
Hmm.
post was something like the challenges are either for like accountability or kind of like what you're saying before, figuring out the systems. And sometimes it's just a temporary thing, not a long term thing. I don't know. You'll have to read the what you said verbatim because
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
just
I'll read it. I'll read it real quick here. It was a
okay.
Threads.
Yeah,
It was a Threads post, and then I put some stuff in the
it's
caption. I actually intend to do a podcast episode, a short, well, maybe
ooh.
short-ish podcast episode to give some more context in this. So what I posted was 2 ways to approach fitness and or nutrition challenges. One, use it to create streaks to see how many days in a row
Mm-hmm.
you nail basic and foundational habits, reduce the gaps between those streaks. And or two, use it to identify the threshold when it comes to the sacrifices you need to make to implement the tasks of the challenge. Understand these are now your upper limits, not a place to be at most of the time.
Yeah,
So there's some more context behind this, and the folks that are listening to this will then get a early like a sneak
a preview.
listen. It's not really a sneak peek. Yeah, preview. Thank you. They'll get a preview on this. I don't know when I'm going to record it. I'm just jotting down notes as I think of it throughout the day. I'm anticipating doing a podcast episode of if I were to do 75 hard again,
Mm-hmm.
here's how I would do it.
Oh,
And that was a context of where I thought of that particular post, because I think that based on the perspective that I've got myself, and then also feedback from, I would reasonably say it's within the hundreds of people range at this point now that
mm-hmm.
I've interacted with who have done the program or attempted to do the program itself, and
Mm-hmm.
then countless other challenges that I've personally been involved in, or my friends who are coaches have put on, and different things like that. Just this piece around like, well, this is a good or a bad challenge, or this challenge does or doesn't work.
Mm.
And I think that any challenge can be good or it can be bad. I'm more about like, why don't you navigate the challenge instead of the challenge telling you what to do? So even with something, for example, like your challenge, which is so it's the challenge is to run every morning, right? Or when you do your runs, do them in the morning.
Yeah, yeah, and I made it
Okay.
clear like everyone has their own goals. So like my goal is 7:30, but like, morning for someone
Yeah.
else could be getting out by 9, whatever. Um whatever it means to them.
Or some of us crazies that get up at, 4 or 5. Sure.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
too.
So say if I were to be in that particular challenge based on what I posted around 2 different approaches, say that I'm somebody who doesn't really run, like
Hmm.
hardly at all. And I want to use I want to do that challenge, then I can use that particular challenge as a way. If I take the approach of, okay, I'm going to use it to identify the threshold and figure out, okay, what are the things that I need to put in place in order to run 5 times a week before 9 a.m.
Hmm.
And as I'm going through, how long is the challenge for originally? Was it intended to be?
Originally, we were going to do 1 week, then I extended it to 2 weeks because some people were like on vacation but wanted to do
Yeah.
it.
Okay.
And now I'm just leaving it for like the whole summer so we can
Okay.
all
So let's
suffer.
say initially it was like a 30-day challenge,
Yeah.
right? Like a 4-week challenge. Okay. Then for someone like myself, who is somebody who's going to use it as motivation to get back into running, and you've made it specific that like, hey, when you do your runs, you do them before 9 a.m. Okay, cool. Then what I'm going to do is approach it with the mindset of, okay, for the next 30 days,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to run 4 or more times per week, and I'm going to do it at 8 a.m. And I then, as I'm going through the process, some days I get it done and some days I don't. Each time though, I'm learning, okay, well, man, why was I able to get it done Monday and Tuesday? Oh, I did these particular things ahead of time. Why was I not able to get it done on Thursday and Friday? Ooh, I had forgotten that, usually I have this event that goes until
Mm-hmm.
super late. So my sleep is kind of crappy. It's harder for me to get up in the morning, that sort of a thing. So I'm spending that entire time understanding what it takes to be at like the upper limit
Mm-hmm.
of the threshold. After those 30 days are over, I don't still commit to, I'm going to still try and hit this upper limit. I take the learnings that I've gotten over the last 30 days, and then I identify, okay, for the next 30 days, what do I believe is realistic? Like, I've now understood how much is quote unquote too much for
Mm-hmm.
me, because I held myself to a standard that was like super high compared to where I was. So take something like 75 hard. Like I don't work out at all. And now I'm going to commit to working out 2 times per day for the
Mm-hmm.
next 75 days. So after 75 days, does that mean that the definition of success is working out 2 times per day? No. It means that I've learned the sacrifices that it takes in order for me to work out 2 times a day for 75 straight days. I'm not willing to continue to make those particular sacrifices going forward. What can I realistically do that continues me on my journey? So that's one way to do it. The
Mm-hmm.
other way to do it would be, okay, I'm going to sign up for this particular challenge, because for the most part, I think this would be more like relatable to probably the folks that are in the challenge. Like, um, you know, uh, every now and then I will get up and run in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
but for the most part, I kind of squeeze it in where I can. Like, I know I'm going to run on Tuesday, but I don't necessarily always mark a time. It's just like, I'll get it in when I get it in. I think there's a window at 9. I think there's a window at 3, that
Mm-hmm.
sort of a thing. But I still run 5 times a week. Like, I get my
Yeah.
runs in, but I've been kind of wishy-washy. They're all over the place, right?
Yeah.
So then if I'm that person with the other part of this post, then what I'm doing is I'm going through like recommitting to a habit that I already have in place. I'm recommitting to the consistency of that. And so what I then am doing is I'm figuring out, okay, how many so when I talk about like streaks, that's something that I took from is it Gretchen Rubin? I think it's Gretchen
That's a
Rubin.
person.
Yeah, there's I had a guest on my podcast who had talked about Gretchen Rubin, and I think that's where I'd heard about this idea of like streaks, some people being motivated by streaks. So I like
Mm-hmm.
streaks when it comes to, it's something that's basic and foundational. Let's see how many times in a row I can do that particular thing. So it just requires a little bit of a tweak versus the other example where it's like, I don't run at all. No, I
Mm-hmm.
run pretty regularly. It's just now I've got like some actual, like I'm putting some structure behind it, and let's see first, how long can I keep that streak going? And then if I do break the streak, how quickly can I jump right back in and start a new streak? So you
Mm-hmm.
close the gap between like that sort of thing. So that's the rant that I didn't know I was going to go on, but that's challenges. I'm just going to go ahead and clip that, and I'll just use that for my podcast.
Good. That was we're at 15 minutes already just from
I
that.
know. Yeah, well, you caught me. Yeah, you definitely caught me at a time where I've been brainstorming just random ideas around around that. So
Oh,
yeah, if you can just send me that
yeah.
clip, that'd
I
be
can do that.
fantastic. And then I'll just spend part of it going over, okay, and here's the tactical, like how I would attack 75 hard now.
Yeah, that
So
works.
anyways, okay, cool. All right.
Other than that,
Now that I
another
interrupted your updates.
another running related update. I ordered a sweat test, and I'll be doing it tomorrow. So the
Oh,
sweat test will tell me how much fluid I lose in an hour, and then I'm going to send. It's basically like you put a patch on your forearm, you go run for an hour, you weigh yourself before and after, and if you drink any liquids, you calculate that in. So you figure out your sweat rate per hour, and then you send the patch to a lab, and then they'll tell me how many electrolytes I lose per hour, so that
hmm.
when I'm going for like my hydration plans, I know more specifically, like I know I'm a salty sweater because there's salt all over me and like my pack when I finish running, but I'm curious how salty. Like, do I need to be using Element? Do I need like less electrolytes, more electrolytes? Am I
Oh,
underdoing it? You know? So I'm really excited to get that data point once I do it. But first, I got to
that's
do the
interesting.
test. Yeah. Yeah. Because
Yeah.
electrolytes, there's like the recommended range is so wide because it's so individual. So it can be challenging to know if you're where you are on the spectrum and with your supplementation. So,
Hmm. Okay. Well, that'll be,
yeah.
yeah. So in theory, you'd be able to be much more, ideally much more precise around your hydration plan.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've never done, like, you can do your own sweat rate without ordering a sweat test. You just weigh yourself before and after, and the difference in pounds is how much you lose. Obviously, converting that to fluid ounces because we don't drink water by pounds. um, and then just like factoring in if you drink anything on the run, which I'm probably just not going to because that's why complicate it anymore.
Yeah.
Um, and then you can use that to figure out how much you need to hydrate while on a run per hour. And I think they say you should aim to replace like 75% of what you lose. So, like, not the whole thing. If anyone's listening and does this, don't replace everything you lose. um, but that'll be really nice because I know that I underhydrate, but I don't know by how much. And even if you're 2% dehydrated, that will affect running performance. So, for those of us who care about that, it's really important to stay on top of hydration. And a lot of us really suck at it.
Interesting.
Yeah, now
Hmm.
I'll have numbers,
Yeah.
which will be
Be
fun.
interested to hear how that turns out.
Yeah, I'll be curious. We won't have it probably before next episode because we're recording next week, but the
Yeah.
episode after, I should have
Okay.
the results. I can report back. So,
All right. Keep us posted.
yeah.
Cool.
Um, let's see other updates. One thing that I've realized since switching, obviously it's been months now since I got my home gym. I don't go to
Hmm.
a gym anymore, and I've realized how much harder it is to go to the grocery store because I used to just tack it on to my gym trips. I've meant to
Oh,
bring this up for so long because
okay.
I like, as I see things are running out, I make my grocery list on my phone, but I don't put the time to go to the grocery store like in my calendar. So I'll go days with like, I know I need to go, but I just haven't gone yet because I don't leave my house for, for many reasons anymore.
Yeah.
Because
Oh,
the
that's
gym was
interesting.
like, I'm passing the grocery store and gas is another thing to and from the gym. So it was like, okay, I go to the gym twice a week. I stop on my way home. It's like very easy. But now
Hmm.
it's like, oh, I just realized I need to be more intentional about it. And when I'm making, everyone knows I live and die by my Google Calendar. I've realized I
Yeah.
need to actually put it on there, or like the whole day will pass. And then I'll be like, oh my God, it's 7 p.m. I don't want to go now. But like, I kind of need food, you know? So that was an interesting side effect that I did not anticipate from no longer going to a gym.
Yeah. Okay. That's definitely not the the path that I thought that particular topic was going, because I saw it on the rundown, and I definitely did not think it was going to be related to that. I thought it was something about like weird people,
Oh, no. Well, I
buying
did.
random things, like that sort of a thing.
No, but I
Oh,
did
joke's on me.
learn Friday morning, mid morning, not the time to go to the grocery store because
Nope.
that's
Yeah.
when, at least around here, a lot of the older shoppers are out, which there's nothing
Hmm.
wrong with them. They're just very slow, and I am not a slow person, and I get very frustrated, especially in the self checkout line. Like, you have 3 items. Why is it taking you 20 minutes here? Just go to someone else who can do it faster. So I've learned I should not go at that hour. Otherwise, I will be annoyed at how long it takes me to get through there.
That is, yeah, that is definitely not the direction I thought we were going. That it makes a lot of, it definitely makes a lot of sense, though. I think something that comes to mind for me on that particular piece of your update is how different the experience is when you are someone who, like myself, who, with the 2 career paths that I've chosen,
Hmm.
it means that a decent amount of my work, especially within like the retail space, a decent amount of my weekend is taken up with work because
Hmm.
that tends to be when the majority of your revenue comes through. And based
Yeah.
on the role that I have, I'm my responsibility is to be there when the majority of the business is actually happening versus being there before or after like customer facing hours.
Hmm.
So I, for the longest time, have had 2 days during the week. My 2 days off are during the week at some point.
Yeah.
Now, like Fridays for the most part, like during the day on Friday, I'm pretty much off, but usually it would be like, Monday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Thursday, or Monday, Wednesday, like that sort of a thing. So I was always used to going to the grocery store, middle of the day, mid morning, that sort
Yeah.
of thing. Just like you, like right after the gym, that's when I would
Yeah.
go, like on my way home. And now that I think about it, you are totally right. Because on the few occasions where I've gone, even sometimes
Hmm.
like on a Sunday
Sundays are not the
midday,
time
on
to
a
go.
Sunday, like post church, like that sort of a thing, or Saturday morning. I made the mistake of
Ooh.
going on a Saturday morning,
Yeah.
and that was a different experience. So yeah, that's why sometimes when people are like, man, based on, again, like from the retail side of my career, very different than the coaching side of my career, because I can pretty much pick and choose when I'm leaving the house,
Hmm.
and things like that. But yeah, when I remember when people would be like, man, grocery store, it's just such a madhouse. I'm like, what are you talking about? There's like hardly, just like me and some random people. Like, that's what are you talking about? It's fine. And then when I went during like the hours where people who probably work 9 to 5s go, it's like,
Oof. Yeah.
oh, I see what you're talking
Like
about
5
now.
to 6 p.m. is brutal.
Yeah. Didn't, yeah. Perspective definitely changes things.
Yeah.
That's
So
wild. All
that's
right.
been fun.
Yep.
My last update is not an update about me, but right now the Olympic trials for track and field are going on, and by the time this comes out, will be so it's like across a week and a half. We're recording this Tuesday, June 25th. So we've just finished the first like 4 days. It was Friday to Monday, and now there's a break until Thursday. I don't know if it's until next Monday or just Sunday. Anyway, when this comes out, we'll be in the second chunk of events. But yesterday, not yesterday, 2 days ago, I don't know, one of
Mhm.
the days, Snoop Dogg was there, and
Yeah, I've only seen snippets of this, so I haven't really seen what the whole
I
story is.
still am unclear of why Snoop Dogg is there, but he ran a 200-meter race, not
Okay, so
against
that was real.
not against elite people, but yeah, he had like one pacer. He ran it in
Interesting.
34:44, which is pretty quick.
Huh.
Especially for someone who like I don't think he runs outside of this 200-meter race. And apparently I don't know if this is true, but someone told him to run the 100-meter, that he would enjoy that more, and he wanted to do the 200 because he's 52, so he wanted to do the two.
That totally tracks. Yeah,
Yeah.
that definitely tracks. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
And then after that, so I was watching the men's steeplechase race. So
Hmm.
this must have been 2 days ago. Um, and he commentated for a bit on it, and he knows nothing about the event. And for anyone who doesn't know what the steeplechase is, it's a track event. You run around the track, you jump over hurdles, and then there's a water pit you jump over. And his comments when they got over the water pit, he was like, wait, you can jump on top of this hurdle? And like the actual commentators were like, yeah, absolutely, Snoop. And I was like, this is just wild. I never thought I would hear that at a track meet. It's so funny.
That is awesome. That is
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, I
So,
think there's something about the like just the I was going to say the average person. Snoop is definitely in the celebrity category. However,
well,
when it
he's like
comes
a
to
normie runner.
yeah,
And not
yeah,
even, I would
normie, that's a
say.
good. Yeah, just the casual observer sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like I think that's an element that's really attractive. You see I was going to say you see some element of that with other networks. However, you really don't. Never mind. I take that back because what I was thinking of is, for example, like when they were showing the NBA playoffs,
Hmm.
or even this past NFL season, they had like the Manning cast where you've got the game that's playing, and then you've got Peyton Manning and Eli Manning,
Hmm.
who are two, for those who are not like massive football fans, they're two brothers who both had very successful NFL quarterback careers. And then they'll have like another player that's on, and it's basically like a split screen, so to speak. So you can see the game, and then you have their faces as they're just having conversation about different things. Now, that's a bit of a different element because you have two of arguably, like Peyton Manning is arguably one of the top five quarterbacks to ever play the game. Eli Manning is one of the top and won a Super Bowl, I think one or two Super Bowls. So they have a little bit of a different aspect to it just because they played the position, so they can kind of tell you what's happening. But
Hmm.
I think that there definitely is like this element of being able to get some commentary that's like talking to like one of your friends,
Yeah.
or you're just sitting around with somebody, like it creates that connection. Now I'm curious if they're going to possibly carry over this type of concept to the actual Olympics broadcast. Have you heard that being talked about or
Mm,
anything, whether
I
it's Snoop or somebody
haven't.
else?
I've seen the people demanding Snoop. The people love
Yeah,
it.
well, I mean, when he did whenever he did whatever it was, the collab with Martha Stewart, I think that's when it pretty much like popped off
Oh,
for
I
him.
don't remember that.
Yeah, this is a while
Um,
back, like a while back. Yeah.
yeah, so I don't know. I mean, because I imagine Snoop costs a lot of money to come commentate the Olympics, but at least for like
Yeah.
in terms of track and field,
Yeah. And
um,
also
he
he may
brings a
bring
lot.
a market. Yeah. He would bring a
Yeah.
market that typically may not tune into that sort of thing. I think what also shouldn't be lost in this particular conversation is like when I was growing up, I remember like Carl Lewis, Ben Johnson, Flojo, Gail
Mm,
Devers, like some pretty prominent track and field athletes that pretty much were like idols in the black community, like big time.
yeah.
And really, over the last, I'd say over the last 3 to 4 years, from like if the average person has heard of an Olympic like track and field athlete, it would be either like Noah Lyles,
Yeah.
and he hit like the mainstream media when he was challenging that, his sport was more difficult than I think the NBA or NFL or something like that. He said something like that.
Oh, I don't remember that, but that sounds like
So
no.
that's one. And then you had Sha'Carri Richardson when she
Yeah.
failed the drug test.
Ugh,
And
that was
that
so
became like a
stupid.
whole controversy,
Hmm.
um, and definitely had some racial undertones to some of the commentating that was going on about that and some of the comments and things like that. So what's not lost on me is that some of this potentially could be somewhat of like a strategic marketing play to
Mm.
try and kind of embrace the black community. It's just a thought that I have. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's just I don't think it's just about like, let's just have Snoop on because he's
No, it
fun.
definitely
I think
isn't.
also I think there's a strategic element that's there, and I'm here for it because sometimes I think in order to draw an audience in, and maybe even beyond just making it about drawing in members of the Black community, I think drawing in people who are more into pop culture and whatnot, like they're more apt to check something out if there's some sort of a recognizable figure, you know? Like,
Hmm.
Lord, if they decided like somehow that they would have, like Taylor Swift commentate or make a comment or something like that, the doors would like blow off the place. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or they could even pick somebody like Kim Kardashian and people would tune in just because they'd want to watch the train wreck, you know? So
Yeah.
I don't know. It would be really interesting though to have like a couple of celebrities who are outside of that space just kind of talking. He's a different animal though. He's a totally different animal
Yeah.
because
It
he's
was
just so
really funny.
chill.
I know.
Yeah.
There is, for anyone who is not aware, coming out, I think I was gonna say July 2nd, but that sounds wrong. Maybe July 5th, on Netflix, a documentary called Sprint, which has Noah Lyles, Sha'Carri Richardson. There's, I think, two other athletes, and I think it's all, don't quote me on this. I think it's
Hmm.
all Black athletes. It's all sprinters. Obviously, Sprint is the name.
Okay.
Um, but I'm really excited for that. And I
Hmm.
think that will also help being on mainstream Netflix, obviously, especially right before the Olympics, getting more people interested in just like watching track events. Because they are very exciting if you have some people you're following, or just like,
Yeah.
even if you don't know anyone, the sprints are really exciting because they're so short and you like know very quickly who won.
Yeah. I see it says Sprint, the world's fastest humans.
Yeah, I want to
And
say the Jamaican runner, I think, is another one. I forget her name.
yeah, it doesn't list everybody that's on there. Yeah. It just says other runners from the US, Jamaica, UK, Ivory Coast. It
Oh,
premieres
UK.
ahead of the starting gun in Paris on July. Oh, it
Yeah.
is July 2nd. Yeah,
Oh,
you're right. You're right.
so weird because it's a Tuesday. Okay, whatever.
Well, it looks like, I don't know.
That's
Anyways,
exciting.
well, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, might tune in.
Yeah, another note about commentators. So in climbing this year for the Olympics, they have, I want to say Matt Groom he's the one who commentates pretty much everything in climbing competitions.
Hmm.
So I'm pretty sure he's the one commentating the Olympics, but they're also bringing in Alex Honnold, who he's in the climbing community. He's from free solo. He's the one who climbs up. Okay, he climbs up
Yeah,
the big walls like in Yosemite. El Cap is its nickname. Anyway, it's a big wall. He climbs up
I've
without
heard
a
free
rope.
solo. That's about it. Oh,
Yeah, he climbs up things without ropes, basically.
okay.
Which is very different than competition climbing, but they're bringing him in to commentate, and that'll be interesting because he is more in, like, the normies outside of climbing know him from free solo and everything, but
Yeah.
he doesn't really know much about competition climbing because competition climbing is a lot more like parkour now, jumping around and
Okay.
stuff. He doesn't
Yeah.
really understand like the scoring system and all that, I don't think.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a Snoop Dogg coming in, but within the climbing community, just a different part of the climbing community.
Yeah, that's definitely different. I see where you're going with that. And yeah, it's definitely kind of a different vibe. And I think that'll be kind of interesting because you get somebody who is within the, let's call it like within the genre,
Yeah.
but just a different angle of that particular genre. So that'll be interesting to see. It'd be like having somebody from like the who played on the Harlem Globetrotters come in and commentate for the NBA finals or something like that. Like
Hmm.
they both play basketball, but one is more like entertainment value versus like this
Yeah.
is my livelihood, like competition sort of thing. Not livelihood, but competition. So wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else updates wise for you?
No, I think I've taken up enough of your time.
Well, I mean, I kind of took a few of your time, really. I've got a couple, and then we'll get into the main topic
Yeah.
that we've got for today. So, one, as I alluded to, when we first kicked things off, my technical difficulties were due to some connection issues. So I was traveling down. Mace and I went down to Alabama last week. Yeah, we went down last week for a few days, and I was having some connection issues with the internet down there. So that's what was going on there. Fun experience. So what we went down for, I'll see if I can try to make this make sense. For those who are somewhat casual observers of Major League Baseball, last week was the week that Major League Baseball said that they were going to hold a baseball game. So a Major League Baseball game between the St. Louis Cardinals and the San Francisco Giants. They had that scheduled for Thursday, I think it was. And that game was to be played at a field called Rickwood Field. And Rickwood Field is the oldest professional baseball stadium in the United States, and it's located in Birmingham, Alabama. So some people may be familiar with like the Field of Dreams game, which is played each year. And that's played in like this baseball field that's in a cornfield in Iowa. It's like a very big draw because it's just like kind of old school sort of thing. And there's like been the movie Field of Dreams and all that stuff. Well, this year they kind of took that concept and decided that they wanted to honor, Major League Baseball wanted to honor the Negro Leagues and the contributions of the Negro League players. If you're not familiar with the story of the Negro Leagues, to make it very, very, very short and not even come close to giving it a sliver of the credit that it deserves, the Negro Leagues were created because at the time, black players were not allowed to play on the same teams as white players, just period, point blank. So a different league was formed. Eventually, desegregation happened. There's a whole lot of different backstories. In fact, there's this video that's floating around that was part of the live broadcast on Thursday night, where Reggie Jackson, who actually played in the Southern League, which is like a minor league, he played for the Birmingham Barons, I think, which was a minor league team at the time down in Birmingham. And he recounted some of his experience and some of the racism that he experienced. For folks that are listening to this right now, if you have not watched this this video from Reggie Jackson, and it's Alex Rodriguez asked him a question, and it's even hard not to get emotional like talking about it. Like, this is Reggie Jackson, so he's like a Hall of Famer, and he's talking about stuff that was happening in like the 60s and 70s that he was going through, like restaurants refusing to let the team eat there because he was on the team. I mean, period, point blank, and he did not censor anything, and Fox let the broadcast go, which I think what needed to happen.
Yeah.
But if you have a second, like, just Google Reggie Jackson. If you just Google Reggie Jackson, the video's all over the place. So anyways, that game was to be held at Rickwood Field down in Birmingham. My parents live down there, so I thought, great experience. We'll get down there and see if we possibly can get tickets to that game, because the ticket prices were sky high. With it being the oldest baseball stadium in the country, professional baseball stadium, you can only imagine how many seats there were not available in the stadium. I think they actually added seating to bring it up to, it's either 8,000 or 10,000. I can't remember seats in the stadium, which is still considered very small.
Yeah,
for a baseball, to play a major league game in. But the cool thing was, a couple of days before the major league game, the minor league team, the Birmingham Barons, were going to play a game at Rickwood Field. It's not their normal field. So basically, it was like the local minor league team was going to play against this other team called the Montgomery Biscuits, and they were going to do kind of their own version of a tribute to the Negro Leagues. So we were able to secure tickets for that. So Mace and I got to go to the minor league game on Tuesday night, and Major League Baseball already had put up a whole bunch of stuff. Like, they created basically like a mini Negro League history museum within like the grounds of the ballpark itself. And for those that aren't familiar with where Rickwood Field is located, it's in the middle of the hood in Birmingham. And we had just been there this like this time last summer we were down there. And so before we went to church one morning, my dad drove us down there so that we could check out like what it looked like and all that stuff. And to be able to see like just what they were able to do with that stadium between last year when we were there and then this year in order to get it prepared to play a major league game, because games aren't regularly played there at all. It was a
Mm.
complete transformation, like complete transformation, because it's in the middle of a neighborhood. This
Yeah.
is not like you go out and there's like parking and whatnot, because they actually had you park at a different facility that they used for the World Games, I think, actually,
Oh.
like 2 years ago. Yeah, it's like a soccer stadium, but they had you parked there and then there were shuttles. It was very, very well organized, all that stuff. So anyways, we went down there, we checked that out, had a good time down there. So that was a fun road trip down and then road trip back. So that's that update.
Hmm.
And then the other update that I have is I am canceling my plans for the trail run.
Why?
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a couple of things that really are the major contributing factor. To be as transparent as I want to be,
Mm.
one of the main things is that with some of the other commitments that I've got going on from a family standpoint, and some things that are kind of up in the air, I'm not comfortable committing to a specific event that I know I'm going to have to travel to, when I know that I've got a couple of fluid situations that may need my attention at any point in time.
Yeah.
And that's as transparent, quite honestly, as I care to be with that particular piece. And I'll be straight up, like I struggled with the decision to say like, no, I'm not going to participate in this, because in the nature of the work that we do, right? Like if I don't know, if we were to just be like, oh, well, there's a possibility that you might not be able to do the event, so don't worry about doing it. Yeah, just cancel. Like if we did that every single time, I'm not sure. I'll speak for myself. I'm not sure I'd ever get anything done with anybody. If
Yeah.
it
No.
was like, there's a particular event that they want to participate in, or for yours, I mean, definitely primarily like a lot of event driven type stuff.
Yeah.
But, I struggled with it internally because I was like, well, no time is ever perfect, right? And nothing is ever predictable. And also, I know that based on like where I am from like a mental state, I know that it would continually bother me if I was continuing to train for something and then getting close to that point, and then if my presence was needed somewhere else, and then I'm thinking to myself, yeah, but I've been training for this thing. Clearly, the priority would be going to take care of the family obligation.
Mm.
I mean, that would happen. And also, there'd be a part of me that would just be like, oh, I've really been training for this thing. This is a bummer, like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I'm just being honest with it. So that was one piece of it. And then lo and behold, I'd already made that particular decision. And then last night, we actually got some information on like one of the first family weekends at the college at University of Alabama that Ava's going to be going to. And it's that same weekend.
Oh.
And it's the first family weekend that we would be able to attend.
Huh.
So I'm just like, okay, well, there we go. So that was kind of like the validation. So TBD
Yeah.
on what the focus will be. I've got a few things, but I've got a call with my coach coming up. Actually, the day that this comes out, I'll have a call with him and we'll map out really what the plans are kind of going forward. This doesn't really put a whole lot of things on hold. It slightly changes, what I was doing on non-lifting days, but that's about it for right now. So yeah, those are my updates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see that not a lot, but I see those are the hardest decisions for athletes to make. Like deciding not to do a race that you had previously had in mind.
Yeah. Yeah. From the coach's aspect, you think you get it, right? And you try to empathize with somebody as much as you can. And like, hey, at the end of the day, I'll support you whichever direction that you want to go, like that sort of a thing. And then when the the phrase like the shoe is on the other foot, you get reminded of like how difficult decisions like that can be. And let's not get it twisted. On the scale of like difficult life decisions, this one's not a real hard one to make. Okay. So
Yeah.
miss me with the, you think that's a difficult decision? Miss me with all that. All right. I'm simply using the word difficult just because I don't know of another word to use at the time. All right.
Yeah.
So I'm not ranking it high on the hierarchy of like whatever that story was in the Bible on like which child to save. I'm not going that far. All I'm saying is, yeah, it was one of those things where I was just like, man, I don't know. And I am constantly working on trying to get better at like finishing things, follow through on things, like the whole because I said I would
Yeah.
sort of piece. It's still, I mean, it's always going to be a work in progress, and I'm trying to move more towards the range on that spectrum of like I follow through, like I finish what I say I'm going to do. And with this, there was too much. It was too close to 50-50,
Yeah.
really. Like it's just too close to 50-50. And I'm not even talking about a situation where it's like, I don't know, that day Mace might forget his laptop at home and I need to go get his laptop. So I'd have to drive back to go get him. I'm not even talking about that. Like I'm talking
Yeah.
like real stuff here. So we'll see. There's certainly other options, like looking for something that is potentially somewhat closer to our area. I don't know if that's necessarily a thing. There's also possibly planning for something that maybe is located near an area where we're already planning to be for vacation
Yeah.
or something like that. I could also just decide to, create my own thing and just go somewhere and go do a trail. Like there's so many other options that are available.
Yeah.
So TBD. We're not totally done with some sort of a performance-based thing happening, and that's where we're at right now. So
When was
all
it
right.
supposed to be?
October. It was like
Oh, right.
mid-October.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So, all right. Updates done.
Update's
Okay.
done.
All right. So, you want to get into the main topic here?
Yeah. Yeah. Since it stemmed off of something you posted on Threads, I'm going to let you take it away.
Yeah, I am going to pull that up here. Okay. So, we're going to talk about
Competing goals.
I don't know which. Yeah, we're going to talk about competing goals. There is an element of something that I've talked about a few times here. I'm speaking in periods between each word because I'm trying to scroll and find the post. But I think the social media element definitely plays into this as far as like how this whole thing has rolled. So what I did was I posted, this was back on June 8th. Here's what I posted. And I believe I ended up putting this on Instagram. What was really one thing that was interesting, the engagement and commentary on Instagram was close to like nothing. And that's not a problem in my eyes. Yeah, that's not a problem in my eyes. For those that truly know me, like you're within that camp, like those people that truly know me know that my posting / marketing strategy doesn't actually exist. Like I'm just, if I think something might help somebody, I'll post it. If I have a random thought, I'll post it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I had somebody reach out to me. It was like, can you kind of walk me through, how you've been able to grow your platform and that sort of a thing. And I was like, let me refer you to 2 to 3 people that are fantastic at this, because I am not the person who should be talking to you about this in any way, shape, or form. All right. So what I posted, what I was saying is, however, on Threads, within my realm and how things usually go for me, this thing like went wild. So, because as of right now, it's at 109 comments. Now that does include my replies to a few people. Or I'm sorry, 109 hearts or likes, 78 comments. I take that back. It's 78 comments, which still,
either way,
in my world, that's quite a few.
Yes.
So what I said Yeah, what I posted verbatim here is if you're training for a marathon while also pursuing fat loss through a calorie deficit, you have competing goals. And then in quotations, it says, yeah, but I'm not really concerned about my finishing time. I'm just running it for fun, close quotation. I wrote, I'll say it again, you have competing goals. And I don't know. People people went, wow.
People on, well, the thing I enjoy about threads is also the thing I hate most about threads.
Speak on it, please. Speak on it.
Well, I like that, like, it's kind of similar to TikTok. Unlike Instagram, if I post something on threads, it could reach anyone. Doesn't matter if you follow me or not. It's more about like what's in your algorithm.
Mm-hmm.
So it's great because then I also see people that I don't follow. I'm like, oh, I like this.
Yeah.
Um, but then it also goes to people who don't
The men.
agree, and the men,
The
yes,
men.
they don't agree, and they don't want to have constructive conversations about why they don't agree. In my experience, I've only been attacked in my few
Yeah.
my few experiences where things go wrong. Uh, but yeah, it can
Okay.
reach
Well,
a wide variety of people that you wouldn't normally reach.
yeah. I'll read. I'm not going to read all the comments. I'll read.
Some of
Let me
your
read a few of
favorites.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll read a few of them that I may or may not have responded to. I'll read a few of them and then maybe talk about some of the back and forth. So one of the responses, again, I'm going to read what I originally posted. Okay. If you're training for a marathon while also pursuing fat loss through a calorie deficit, you have competing goals. Yeah, but I'm not really concerned about my finishing time. I'm just running it for fun. I'll say it again. You have competing goals. So I compared training for a marathon and pursuing fat loss through a calorie deficit.
Mm-hmm.
So a comment was, um, I agree to an extent. Endurance training is going to be detrimental to muscle building. But if a runner incorporates 1 to 2 days a week to strength train, that can help minimize muscle loss during their race training. So I commented, that's a different path than I had laid out, though. I gave the example of fat loss via a dedicated calorie deficit versus training for a marathon. Those are competing goals. Okay. Didn't respond. Another person responded, and this is what I'm going to call out, and I'm actually going to say the name of the person, and I'm going to most likely pronounce his last name wrong. It's either Mike Dola or Mike Dala. It's Doehla. I'll give you
Okay.
context on why I'm going to call him out here in a
Is this a
positive way.
good? Okay.
Yeah. So Mike responded, true, but I've found quite a few do well by dropping weight alone. Okay. So I responded, yep, I've also found that happening also. In terms of my original post, I'm intending to have a client identify a priority. Certainly wouldn't mean they can't perform at a lower weight. I find the approach to a performance goal versus a body comp goal may differ at times. So he responded, for sure, I'm with you on the message. The reason I'm going to call that particular one out is because I don't know Mike personally. I know people who are acquainted with Mike, and he is a very well respected coach in the business.
Mm.
Um, I I know he and a partner, I believe. I don't know if he still has the particular company that he had, but he's very well respected, like big
Okay.
time. And I believe he actually attended the same conference in Vegas that I was at in
Oh,
March.
cool.
Okay, so that I chose to respond to that particular one just because I knew he was going to actually have some sort of an intelligent response versus like just trying to be a jerk. There was one that so one of the responses, because this guy, we went back and forth actually for a while. So one of the responses was, I would say they go hand in hand, as marathon training will create a caloric deficit by its activity, and a
Excuse me.
caloric deficit will make you lose fat. So I said, I don't
Okay.
disagree that a deficit could occur. My intention is to have a client be clear about what their priority is from the start. He said, I understand that, but that's by no means a competing goal.
Okay.
Right? And yeah, so what ended up happening with that interaction with him, though, is we actually ended up agreeing. Can't find the end of it, but that particular person that last responded, he's primarily a bodybuilding coach.
Okay.
Okay. So at the end of the interaction with him, we both actually agreed like that it's important to pick a priority. And that's what I'm about to jump into in just a minute here. I'll also, this was one interaction, and then we'll get into like an actual conversation here. So this person responded, is this also true for half marathons, 10Ks? Should I wait to run until I'm in ideal shape? Fat loss only comes via caloric deficit. I get what you're saying, but you're bypassing a whole lot of nuance. But I guess that's the social media fitness coach hook. So I said, I try to keep things simple. If I ask someone what their priority is and they say fat loss, then I'd navigate that differently than if they said a marathon. His response, hopefully you haven't lost all our listeners here. His response, I hear you, but keeping things simple as a blanket statement from a coach can be somewhat misleading and even discouraging to newer runners. I like that he brought that up about it, potentially my statement being discouraging to newer runners. I actually took that as like helpful feedback. He said, I'm training for a fall marathon. I ran 2 halves this spring. I'm still losing weight and continue to do so. I'm also aware that I need to fuel more for longer runs. You can be in a caloric deficit 5 days a week, break close to even on long run days, and still lose weight and add miles. It's a trade-off, but definitely an option. So here's where it all starts to make sense. I said, I see why you'd have that point of view based on your personal experience. If a newer runner were to come to me as a fitness coach and wanting to train for a marathon and wanted to lose body fat through a caloric deficit, I would want them to identify which one was the priority. I believe that statement can be taken as you can't lose body fat while training for a marathon, even though that's not what I wrote.
Yeah.
So that's the point I want to make, because multitude of people thought, like, they translated it as you can't lose body fat while you train for a marathon. And that's not what I wrote at all.
No.
So he responded, that's definitely how I interpreted it, which is why I tend to react negatively to what I perceive as rules being laid out by experts, maybe just my authority issues coming through. So I wrote him back, like, that's not what my intention was. When you mention your old experience, like, for what it's worth, you're not alone in that perception. And then I just said, thanks for engaging in a social media interaction that maintained a level of human decency. So all along in this thread, the people that disagreed based on their interpretation being me saying that you can't do both at the same time. And that is not what I didn't type that. I didn't say that.
No.
And also I respect the fact that someone translated it as that, even though I used English. They translated it that way.
Yeah.
What it opened up was a conversation that I think is important to have. One, around understanding what competing goals means, and 1A, understanding what the word priority means. Like, in my head, I'm like, why are people so afraid to identify a priority? So I'll step off the soapbox for a minute here because that last part is, again, based on I say limited perspective because I'm one person in this universe. So based on my limited perspective, as a person who spends the majority of their time involved in the fitness industry, I see this very regularly where there's like either I'm going to hope that it's like a subconscious fear of identifying this is the priority in the list of things that I want to accomplish. It's being translated as this is the only thing that I'm going to be doing. Yeah. That means it's an or, not an and. And it's literally like this fear that people have of admitting that one thing is a priority over the other. Like all of a sudden, okay, so I want to train for a marathon.
Yeah.
That is priority. Then the next thing on the list underneath that, for my visual folks, the next thing on the list underneath that is I would like to lose body fat. And the amount of like difficulty that people have in literally admitting which one is actually the priority is wild to me.
Hmm.
I do not understand it.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'll be quiet for a
I
minute.
don't see that struggle.
Okay.
I was gonna say I don't
Well,
see
you're thinking
that.
about it now. I was like,
Well,
you're
okay,
thinking
I
about it
see
now.
something similar, but I feel like it's different.
Explain.
Maybe not. So hopefully the listeners know I don't help people lose weight, body composition. That's not my thing. I help people do better at running.
So let me throw something out there.
Yes.
I will make this very quick.
Okay.
Listeners are all rolling their eyes like, okay, you're never quick with any of this. Would it be fair to say that if someone comes to you and they are wanting to run their first ultra,
Yeah.
and in the conversation, whether it's, I don't know your whole process, say if it's during the intake conversation or whether it's during a discovery call, whatever it is, during that conversation, they also mention that at some point they would like to be able to change their body composition at some point down the road.
Mm-hmm.
Has that person not made it clear that one thing is the priority and you can help them with their priority?
Yes. I haven't gotten to the similar situation yet.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying,
Okay.
I'm really doing that for the person out there who may be thinking like, well, I can't come to Kelly because I actually do want to lose weight.
Oh, yeah. No, I've
Yeah,
had
that's
people
what I'm
mention
saying.
it, and then I make it clear, like, I don't help with that. I help with
Right.
the running.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, if you want to pursue weight loss, I highly recommend you work with, like, a dietitian or someone that can.
Have you had those have you had some of those folks still continue to work with you?
Oh, yeah. I had one. She just ran her first half marathon, and it went great.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. But, well, I think
Okay.
part of it, I don't get too many people like that. I
Yeah.
think we've talked about this based on, like, my messaging and what I post
Oh, yeah,
about stuff.
absolutely. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
But where I see similarities is I work with a lot of people who like to do other activities or other sports.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it is challenging for them to say, it's not challenging for them to say running is the priority, but it's challenging for them to step back on the other thing, like climbing, for example, that is not the priority during a race buildup. So, like, they're
Yeah,
fine with
like it's
saying it, but the action of doing it.
saying versus doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my
Which
gosh,
I
we talk
get.
about this all the time. Like saying versus doing, there's a gap between those two, and what we're going to work on is closing the gap between those two things.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great example though, Kelly, because it is the primary example that I will use when I ask someone to identify what their priority is. And as I've been in this business for years now, approaching next year will make 10 years at this point, from a certified standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Side note, I'm going to be doing an episode later around like advice from your fit friend, which I used to be, versus guidance from your coach. Two different things. Yeah, I can't wait for that one. So what I've come to see though is initially I'll ask someone, okay, and out of these different things, it's sort of normal. So talk to me about some of the things you'd like to accomplish. What are some of the goals that you have? I want to get stronger. I want to lose weight. I want to move well. All that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'd like you to prioritize those for me. Which one is your priority?
Mm-hmm.
And that, say, well, and people will, many times they'll be like, at the end of the day, I just want to feel better.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, gotcha. And then what I will do is I identify for them, okay, so here's why I'm asking. And when somebody is kind of hemming and hawing and back and forth, and I say this from the standpoint of the person who has been that person and occasionally still is that person in some aspects of my life,
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to like, okay, what's the main, when they say like keep the main thing, to me, like I translate that as like, make sure you've identified a top priority, right? Or a priority.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the scenario that I'm going to have for you
Okay.
is if you are, let's say you want to train for a marathon and you want to lose weight.
Okay.
Okay. You want to do those two things. I'm going to ask you to identify a priority. And somebody will say, well, I don't really want to, I'd like to do both. Okay. I understand that. Let me give you a scenario. 7 weeks from now, we are doing a check-in and we've noticed a pattern where your sleep is starting to decline. So the quality of your sleep is starting to decline somewhat.
Mm-hmm.
You've been on a pretty decent path where we're losing weight at somewhere from 0.25 to zero point 0.4 pounds per week on average. I consider that to be a pretty safe clip, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's happening. You have noticed that in the runs, you're lacking a bit of energy. Like you're just noticing that you're lacking a bit of energy in your runs. You're still getting them done. And you've also noticed this biofeedback marker. So you've got energy during the performance itself. And you also are noticing that just sleep, things are a little bit more restless and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
What I'd like to do, because we've really got to make sure that we're protecting your sleep. And you've noted like a couple of times here and there, like you're going to bed feeling kind of hungry, like that sort of a thing. Um, and also like you just feel like during runs you're not a lot of energy. What I'd like to do, let's bump your calories up just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that sometimes can help with sleep is actually getting some carbs in before you go to bed.
Yeah.
So that's something that could be helpful. And then also, I partnered up with my friend Kelly and I was telling her about your situation. And one of the things that she asked me like is, hey, are they fueling while they're on their runs, like as their mileage is starting to pick up? Oh, we probably should do that. So I'd like you to, you go on your runs at 2 p.m. So I'd like you to make sure you're well fueled, like going into that run. So you really got to make sure you're eating breakfast. You've been eating one piece of toast. I'd like you to increase it to 2. You've been eating half a banana. I'd like you to increase that. Like you'd have a good solid lunch. And then recovery wise, let's increase things. So we're going to increase things about, let's say 300 calories. Right on average. We're going to increase by about 300 calories on average.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what that's going to do? That's going to take you out of a caloric deficit.
Mm-hmm.
So we may not be losing weight anymore because we need to protect the priority.
Yeah.
So if you say that your priority is training for the marathon, even though you don't care about my finishing, my placing, I just want to just do well. I want to do the event. I'm not trying to compete. I just want to do the event, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to protect your energy, protect your training, all that stuff. Then that's the priority. Now, if those signs are happening and you've said that fat loss is the priority, then I'm actually going to take an opposite approach. I'm going to say, well, I can't really bring you out of that deficit
Mm-hmm.
because I've got to protect, the weight loss is the main thing. Excuse me, weight loss, not fat loss. So the weight loss is the main thing.
Yeah.
So here's what we need to do. I know that this could have a detrimental effect on your performance in the marathon. I'm going to ask you to dial your mileage down or dial your frequency down or something. I'm going to ask you to change your training.
Yeah.
Folks, that is what I'm talking about. Like the scenario that I'm talking about when you identify a priority, because at some point, you will be faced with a decision where you need to decide what direction to go. And if you don't have a priority, then what are you going to do? And if you're the person, the unicorn who never faces that, and you can also tell me that you aren't facing any detrimental effects 3 to 6 months, really not even 6 months, 3 months after
Mm.
either the fat loss is over and you're reversing out or the event is over and you're reversing out, then cool. you are a very small minority. So at some point you got to make a decision. You got you got to. My friend Mike tells me all the time, like about some basketball coaching that he got, like when he was a kid. He's like, you got to pick a shoulder and go. Like you got to decide a direction that you're going to go. Like you can't straddle the line. Like you got to pick a lane on the highway. You can't keep driving
Yeah.
and have one wheel on the left and one wheel on the right. You're going to get pulled over.
Or hit.
You know what I mean? Or in an accident, you know? So that's the scenario. And I don't think that scenario is so far-fetched.
No.
Like, call
I
me
mean,
crazy. I
especially,
don't think it is.
no. I think especially in the case you posted about, like, marathons and above require a lot of time, a lot of training, a lot of other sacrifices.
Yeah.
So, like, the person who did comment about, like, does this apply to shorter distances? Honestly, probably not as much, especially if you're just looking to compete or complete them. Like,
Yeah, that's
you
fair.
could complete a 5K, 10K and lose fat. No problem. Not no problem, but much
Mm-hmm.
easier than a marathon because, like, you don't have those mega long runs and those. I guess if you're just completing a marathon, you don't have to do speed workouts, but yeah, even up to like a half. But yeah, I just see a lot of people, especially with ultras. People want to run ultras. They don't want to stop skiing. They don't want to stop climbing. They don't want to stop biking. And I'm like, you got to run more than 3 days a week. You just gotta. Or like, you're at a high risk for injury. You're not going
Yeah.
to have a good time. It's just, I don't think that trade off is worth it, but it can be really hard convincing people to pull back on something else during a period of focus time for running, which is also why I don't know if we've talked about this before, but like in a lot of sports, you have periods of competition, pre competition, then you go into like transition off season, and that's when
Yeah.
you can ramp up the other things you like to do because running takes more of a back seat because you're not prepping for your big goal anymore. You're just kind of maintaining. Yeah, we've talked a lot about maintaining, but I feel
Yeah.
like that's like such a hard concept for people to trust in that you can pull back certain times of year and then floor at other times of year. And it's just like a push pull between your priorities, but they all can't be number one year round, year after year.
Yeah. I completely, I mean, I completely agree. I completely agree. And I would like to I would like to consider myself as someone who is open to hearing different perspectives and trying to understand where someone is coming from when they disagree and see something differently. Like
Mm-hmm.
I purposely, I was just talking to my dad about this when I was visiting with him last week. I purposely seek out opposing points of view, like
Mm-hmm.
purposely, whether it's in fitness and nutrition, whether it's in parenting, whether it's in politics. I almost exclusively spend more time trying to understand why I would potentially be wrong than I do looking for things that confirm my point of view. Actually, to the point where for a while it got my algorithm all jacked up. Like all especially like Facebook was real hard for a while,
Oh
like a
no.
few years ago. Yeah. Like Facebook was really hard, especially during the pandemic.
Oh
That
God.
was just, yeah, like I was not
Mm-mm.
okay. I was
Yeah,
not
I bet.
okay because, yeah, because there were certain ways that I was looking at certain situations. And so I was like, oh, I'm just kind of curious, like, what this group, like what's their platform? And I'm not talking political platform. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
like, what's their platform? Like, where does this belief come from?
Mm-hmm.
And then I was just getting like garbage all over the place. I was like, we got to redo this whole thing. So I think the challenge, one of the main challenges that I have had in this conversation or these interactions, especially on threads, is the fact that the overwhelming majority of the responses that I got that disagreed came at it from the angle of both things can't happen at the same time.
Yeah.
And that's not what I
Not what you
that
said.
wasn't my intention. Yeah, really, it goes back to, again, the example that you talked about with, like, as training starts to ramp up, for example, like the way I translated it, perceived it, as training starts to ramp up for an ultra or whatnot, I may need you to step back from some of the other activities that you're doing. Like, there are going to be some trade-offs and some sacrifices.
Mm-hmm.
And to what helps us to what's the word that I'm looking for? Expedite the process
Mm.
of making that decision on what the next step is because we are crystal clear on what the priority is.
Yeah.
So I think about this from the aspect of from a business standpoint. When a business understands who is the priority, right? So a business, and I say this as someone who has worked in multiple businesses
Mm-hmm.
within primarily the retail industry, and you identify a business identifies who its target psychographic is.
Yeah.
Some even will go as far as like demographic. I used to work at Abercrombie and Fitch. That's a whole different ball game, right? Like way back in the day when I was like 18. All right.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So, and by the way, everything on that Netflix documentary, not over exaggerated, hella
I don't
true.
think I've watched it. Wait. No, I
Was
must
it?
have watched
Yeah,
it.
was it Netflix? Yeah, it
It
was.
was,
Yeah.
yeah. It was just like
So,
not super recent.
but a business will identify who its target is, like who is the target psychographic, demographic, whatever. And while some folks who are outside of that particular demographic may post that they don't really like the direction the marketing has gone,
Mm.
they don't like this particular change that was made to whatever, the reality, hello folks, like the reality is if you don't fit within the demographic that contributes the overwhelming percentage to the bottom line profitability of that company, you're basically whispering.
Mm.
You think you're shouting because you're posting it all over your social media.
Mm-hmm.
You are a whisper when it comes to the boardroom. Because at the end of the day, the people who spend who are the most profitable. Let me take that back. Not the people who spend the most money. The people who are the most profitable are the people who drive it. Those are the priority.
Mm-hmm.
So the same thing when it comes to your your fitness and your training is when you identify you gotta identify a priority. Like, why are we so afraid to do this? To just say like, okay, well, yes, this is my priority. And so what that means is on the occasions where I'm starting to notice that I need to make some adjustments or whatever, that's why it's so easy for companies, because companies are like, at the end of the day, like, man, we've got to make a decision how we're going to handle this particular crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what they're not focusing on? What is this small minority of people going to think?
Yeah.
That is, come at me if you want to convince me that I'm wrong. Okay, that's fine if that's what you want to think. At the end of the day, people who are representing 2% of the profits for a company are not going to have as big of an impact in a room that they're not even in as people who affect 98% of it.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, neither of those people is physically in the room anyway, but the people who hold 98% of the profitability are the people, like, they're the priority. And so think about your training and your fitness the same way. Like, wherever your priority is, when it's time for you to pick a horse and ride it, like, then it makes your life a lot easier. It expedites the entire process instead of trying to figure out, okay, well, which one's the main thing. I found
Mm-hmm.
something interesting.
What?
So, uh, I've referenced before that I read this book called Essentialism from Greg McKeown, and
Okay.
it's McKeown, Greg McKeown.
Okay.
So he wrote this book called Essentialism, and I'm pretty sure that it came from that book. I'm going to leave myself room to be wrong because he wrote another book called Effortless, and I've read both of them.
Okay.
So, Essentialism is, in summary, about focusing on what actually matters, like the
Mm-hmm.
essentials. Okay. So you got like 8,000 things in your wardrobe, right? But which ones are your essentials?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Hopefully people get that reference. All right. So in Essentialism, one of the things that Greg McKeown shared, I have not been able to find an actual, I was going to say biblical reference, not biblical. I have not been able to find an actual like factual reference to this.
Okay.
And it's good enough that I'll go with it. He said that the word priority was not used in plural. So priorities didn't show
Oh.
up in written form until sometime in the 1940s.
Oh.
So the word priority, I think I want to say he first saw it, he says that it was first like in written form somewhere around the 1400s.
Okay.
So priority in terms of rank, right? So priority was the thing. Like what is the priority?
Mm-hmm.
And then the word priorities, where you had multiple priorities, started to come out in business language, business literature, sometime in the 1940s. And so I started trying to go a little bit down the rabbit hole to see if there was any sort of factual basis for what he had written in his book. And pretty much all that I found was pretty much like the same stuff that he talked about, where they said like it basically started to be a thing within businesses as they were trying to strategically plan
Oh.
for their strategies and whatnot. It's like, okay, here's what our priorities are
Okay.
for this year, right? So like business planning, like
Yeah.
just like we would do as coaches, like what are our priorities this
Mm-hmm.
year? So it really gets me to thinking that we as a society, like a culture, have enabled this whole thought process of like, if you identify a priority, that is actually saying that you can't be focused on multiple things at once. You can be focused on multiple things at once. It's just at some point, something will need to be the priority
Mm-hmm.
instead of I have multiple priorities. They can't all be priorities. Or if they are, at least can we say priority 1, 2, 3? Can we at least do that?
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing too. It still just comes down to me, I would, and I've posted this before, like when people have said like, can I build muscle and lose fat at the same time?
Mm.
Before I answer that, ask yourself why you won't rank one in front of the other.
Yeah.
Like, why won't you? And what that in the past, when I've gone down that road, what it has turned into is a very productive conversation around understanding beliefs in what happens when you build muscle and understanding the beliefs of what happens when you are focused on fat loss. So that's the conversation that typically evolves, is you get a better understanding of where people's belief systems are, and then understand why they are, for lack of a better term, afraid to say, I'm going through a fat loss phase or I'm going through a muscle building phase. I primarily work with women. It primarily is, I'm afraid to say that I'm going through a building muscle phase, a bulking phase, whatever,
Yeah.
because here's what I believe, like here's what I think happens during those particular phases.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the things they talk about are true, and then some of them are people mishandling a muscle building phase and then saying that don't try to build muscle, you'll just get fat.
I believe that.
Yeah. Yeah. You're like, yep. Yeah. So at the end of the day, folks, competing goals. It's sit down and just, I would first map out like what you believe it would take to achieve goal one, what would it would take to achieve goal two, goal three, however many you've got. And then perhaps after you've gone through those particular things, then you'd be in a better position to rank them 1, 2, and 3. But I will still stand by, in no way, shape, or form did I say that both cannot happen.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing.
Yeah.
All right.
I just thought of this, and we probably can't riff on this too much, but I feel like part of maybe one of the reasons people struggle to say one's a priority over the other is because a lot of people are impatient. And so if you have to rank one over the other, then like you can't, not that you can't focus on the other one until a certain
Yeah.
time, but like if we're talking about like annual planning, and we're playing like, okay, this season we're focusing on running, this season we're focusing on climbing. A lot of people
Hmm.
really struggle to think more long term, even though a lot of these goals are long term. Obviously, fat loss, you're not going to be in that long term. It's more of a concentrated period of time and then you shift. But like running goals, like, sorry to break it to everyone, a lot of these things you're not going to like achieve within 1 year. Or if you are, like, you're not thinking big enough. Um,
Hmm.
but like a lot of goals, performance goals, I should say, a lot of performance goals, they're going to take, we've talked about this so much, like years of consistency. And like, it's not going to be your number one priority for 5 years straight. There's going to be the
Yeah.
ebbs and flows, but a lot of people struggle to think that far out, you know?
Yeah, that's such a good point, and I think that it brings up a good case for understanding periodization
Hmm.
and phases.
Yeah.
So when I talk about periodization, what I'm talking about is, say, over the course of a year, if we're looking at something from a body composition standpoint, then over the course of a year, we're going through a phase where we're specifically focused on building muscle. Then we go through a specific fat loss phase. Then we specifically go through like a, let's kind of nutritionally, you're going to be reversing and trying to bring those calories back up. And it's basically maintenance. So we're trying to find your new maintenance and then try to live there for a while. That's actually a phase that takes a while to understand, because after you've built calories up and then gone into a deficit, then at that point, it doesn't mean that your previous maintenance. So say if you were at like 2000 calories prior to going into your deficit and you went down to 1500 during your deficit, it doesn't mean that 2000 is now your new maintenance. You don't know that necessarily for sure. So a
Hmm.
lot of times it can be a bit of a guessing game. And I know that sounds kind of reckless. And also, I'll just be straight up with you. Sometimes it is a bit of a guessing game. And instead of making the guessing game like a free for all, you strategically try to understand what are the biofeedback signs, what are your measurements, what's your body weight, like all, you take all those things into account as you are slowly building things back up, because you're trying to maintain health, you're trying to maintain energy, you're trying to maintain performance, and you're trying to figure out, okay, now where's that new kind of set point that we need to settle into. Maybe you shouldn't call it set point. What's that new range that we're trying to settle into? And then
Hmm.
live there for a while as you live your life, and not making as many trade-offs as you were during your deficit. However, there are still going to be trade-offs during the during that maintenance period. So just as you talk about, like if it's like an off season, there's and we'll wrap here shortly. Chris Bumstead, uh, who folks who are in like into like the bodybuilding thing will know, like CBum. He's won the Olympia. I don't know how many years. Is it like 5 times? I can't remember.
Whoa.
He's won the Olympia multiple times in a row.
Okay.
And my friends and I got the opportunity to, we've gotten the opportunity to hear him speak live 2 years, I think, in a row now at the Arnold in Columbus.
Hmm.
And I remember one of the things that he talked about, it was him and his coach, Hani Rambod, who's very well known in the bodybuilding space, coached multiple like world champions. And one of the things that Sebum was talking about when he talked about the change over to being coached by Hani. So previously, Sebum was working with a different coach. I think it was actually his brother-in-law, now that I
Hmm.
think about it. And one year, this would have been maybe 2023, I think it was,
Hmm.
he switched over to Hani with like 12 to 18 weeks until competition, which is
Whoa.
unheard of in that
Uh-huh.
space. Like that is unheard of for somebody at his level to switch a coach and go that route that close to competition, like that close to stage date.
Yeah.
And one of the things that he talked about that was different is that the off season, what he was used to is that when it was off season, because he only competes in the Olympia, he competes
Okay.
in one bodybuilding show for the entire year.
Wow.
Yeah, this dude's a beast. Somebody competes in one show the entire year.
Okay.
And he said that what he would do is during the off season, however long that was, typically he would totally just check out. just do whatever,
Mm-hmm.
like eat whatever, just do whatever. And he said what was different is that with Hani, he was like, during the off season, he's like, I kind of feel like I'm in competition season. So it
Oh,
wasn't really, he's like, he's like, it's nowhere near as intense because it's a total different level of intensity. Let's
yeah.
not get it twisted. It's a whole different level of whatever injectable supplements they're using, like all that stuff. Right.
Yeah.
But he was like, it's different because I don't want to, these aren't the words that he used. This is how I translate it. You never are taking both hands off of the wheel completely
Yeah.
at all. Like you're never like automated driving. It's like beyond cruise control, like hands off the wheel. You don't even have to have your foot on the brake or the accelerator. Like you just let it roll. It's
Yeah.
like there's always, I'm just using my own terms. The way he described it is you've at least got like some hand on the wheel the entire time. Whereas before he would completely disconnect, check out, turn the phone off, factory reset, like the whole nine.
Yeah.
And that is where I think that folks get themselves in trouble because they look at off season or they look at maintenance as off season.
Mm-hmm.
And they're talking about like a complete disconnect. They're not still tied to anything. They don't have any hands on the wheel. They're not making any sort of sacrifices, like anything. And I'm
Yeah.
like, that's just making your competition season that much more difficult.
Yeah.
You know, like I can only imagine some of the stuff that you see. I can only imagine when it's just like, yo, what is the deal?
I mean,
So
you see it too. Holiday season is the big one. Where it's like you talked about this last year. It's like holiday season is really a handful of days,
they're
and then
events.
everyone is like 6 weeks can't do anything. I mean, that's
Right.
like boiling it down to very simple because obviously,
Yeah,
depending
it'll
on.
rain on like Monday and Wednesday, and people will be like, yeah, it rained all last week. Like, really? So you had your umbrella up all the other days too? Well, no, it wasn't raining those days. I'm just saying, like, right. Okay, so here's my point. Like, you're saying holiday season, and you have 4 events.
Yeah.
You have 4 events to go to, but you're calling it a season. Like, that's not a season. So, anyways, all right.
Yeah. All right. Well, we gotta wrap up. So.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. Okay. All right. You want to let the folks know where to get a hold of us?
Yeah. As always, if you don't already follow us on Instagram at Lifting Running Living Pod, you can also email us at liftingrunningLivingPod@gmail.com. And we would love it if you left a 5-star rating and a review if you have some words you'd like to share. And I think that's it.
Yeah. All
Subscribe.
right. Cool. Yes. And if you have ideas, yeah, definitely let us know because we'll be recording again
Next
next
Tuesday.
week.
Yeah.
Next Tuesday. Yeah. All right.
No.
All right. Thank you for listening. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you next time. Bye.
Bye.